Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm sorry. Sorry, just a second. Okay. So, Oyinko, thank you for joining us. This is going to be a great recording.
You're welcome.
I'm going to mute myself in just a second, but if you can just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you got into writing.
Okay, I guess I should start. So my name is Orinco Braithwaite. I'm based in Lagos and Lagos, Nigeria, and I'm the author of My Sister the Serial Killer. Sorry if the light I'm sort of charging my phone so that it doesn't die during this thing. But so I don't know if the light is going in and out, but I'm the author of My Sister the Serial Killer. It's my debut novel, came out first towards the end of 2018. So I think it's almost 2 years now since it was published, which is really exciting. It's been a really sort of roller coaster of an experience. It's I definitely didn't. A question I get a lot is sort of, was I expecting the sort of success that My Sister the Serial Killer got? And I don't know that to be honest, it's a wild question, because I don't know if there are many people that will say yes, they were expecting the exact type of success that their book got. But it was even more of a surprise for me, because initially I wasn't even going to put it out there like that. So I hope that's been a good introduction. I don't know. I was kind of just winging it, but yeah.
No, that was great. My daughter's still crying, so I'm actually going to turn it over to my colleague, Missy. And she's going to ask you the first question.
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. So the question says, how did you settle on the tone for My Sister the Serial Killer? It is amazing. I could see a book on such a sinister topic being very morose, but this book is so clever and fun and dry and hilarious.
Oh, thank you, whoever sent that question. It was all praise in the question, which is great. Starts me off on a good high note. The tone. To be honest, I definitely think about tone when I'm writing, but with this, I thought about it in a different way. I knew I was, okay, sorry, I'm going to answer this question in a roundabout manner, but, I consume a lot of dark content, a lot of light content too, but I consume a lot of dark content. And I remember my mom telling me that she used to be like that when she was much, much younger. And then one day she just couldn't deal with that sort of content anymore, because real life was dark enough as it was. And so now she only watches like comedies and romance, and she only reads like chick lit or Christian fiction. And I thought, am I gonna, like, I couldn't imagine ever getting to that point. However, I've noticed that there is a slight change with me as well, in that I can't just consume dark content, or I can't stay immersed in really dark subjects. And when I was writing My Sister's Serial Killer, I knew that I was going to be dealing with something with a lot of heavy-ish topics. And it takes a long time to write any sort of, a novel, or, even a novella. You might take a year to write a novella, or however long it takes you. And I realized that I didn't want to stay immersed in this really dark, tragic, in this dark, tragic space for that length of time, however long it was going to take me, because I wasn't sure. But however long it was going to take me, I didn't want to stay in this dark space. So I decided that my characters were going to be very matter of fact about the things that were happening to them. Because I think if your character is immersed in it, you're forced to be immersed in it. So I decided my characters weren't going to be, they were, it's part of their crazy that they do something that's really terrifying, or have something that's terrifying done to them, and then they're like, right, and they next thing, and not in a oh, I'm gonna forge ahead sort of manner, but it's almost as if it doesn't really dawn on them that this thing has happened. And I think that's sort of where the comedy comes in, because you have a character who's just murdered someone, and then maybe in the next breath she's thinking about pancakes, and your brain tells you, no, that's not right. That doesn't make any sense. So it wasn't so, I went the long way to say it wasn't so intentional. I was sort of running away from something else, if that makes sense. That's my really confusing answer to that question.
No, great answer. And we had book club last night, and we were kind of wondering the same thing. We didn't ever really find dark humor in it, but we were just, your characters were very matter of fact and just kind of right there. So I think that's a great answer. Yeah. The next question says, how long did it take you to write?
I'm actually fairly quick. I think once I really settled, you know, I have a bad habit of starting stories and not finishing them. So I had on my laptop there are loads of 10,000 word pieces or 20,000 word pieces. You know, sometimes I've gone as far as like 30,000 words, and I'd be like, no, this is terrible. So the greatest challenge for me is settling on an idea, and really believing that that idea will work. Once I do, I write quickly, mostly because I'm afraid whatever I'm working on will end up in that pile of unfinished stories. Thank you, Katie. I mean, I didn't have anything to do with the book cover art, but thank you anyway. So I kind of I live in constant fear that whatever I'm working on is going to join that pile of unfinished stories. So I try to outright my doubts and outright my fear and outright those voices in my head. So I read the first draft really quickly, and then I'm sort of at peace, and I can come back to it and say, okay, you know, what can I make of the mess that I've done? So in terms of how long exactly, it depends. I mean, for a first draft, if it was like a novel length piece and I was being serious, because some of the gaps, I think, in time when it comes to writing is the time when you're not writing, you know, more than anything else. But if I was being serious and I was being disciplined, you know, I try to do like 1,000 to 2,000 words a day. So I could probably finish a novel length in like 2 months. But that's me being like really focused, which happens rarely. So
you are quick. It would take me years. I probably would never finish it, ever. Ever. Okay. The next question says, I love how it was written. Were the short chapters always a part of the plan, and do they add to the story?
Yeah, they were always a part of the plan. I mentioned earlier that I hadn't really planned on putting the story out there like that. I didn't think I was going to send it to an agent or anything like that. So I had the freedom of, you know, at the start it was a novella, and so it was half the size it is now, and you know, I gave myself very specific, I'll say rules for lack of a better word right now, but there were a couple of things I wanted to do. One of the things was actually to write it quickly, but another, you know, but there were a couple of other things I wanted to do, and because I didn't have that sort of burden of thinking, oh, I'm going to have to pitch this to an agent, I'm going to have to pitch this to a publisher. I was doing it for myself, which is something I think I'll never really, it's a feeling I don't think I'll ever really have again. But I was confident that no one would really see it. And so I was free to do things that if I was asked then, I would have thought an agent wouldn't buy into it. I mean, my first chapter is only 2 sentences, and I have chapters that are paragraph long, and it's just something I wouldn't have thought that, you know, that people would really buy into. So it was intentional, but it wasn't because I thought I was doing something that was gonna, you know, win people over or whatever. It was just me, you know, my answers are always kind of, but I try to be I try to do something a little bit different each time I write, so that I'm growing, so that I'm always growing. So it was my way of challenging myself and trying new things and seeing what worked for me. So it was intentional in that sense.
Okay, awesome. The next question is from Heather over in the chat thing, and it says, how do you get your ideas and how do you make it original?
I mean, the ideas one is tough because there's no like one way. It's really whatever tugs at you. Sometimes it's a sentence that someone says, and sentences, I'm a big fan of dialogue. Say somebody says something that I think, oh, it's interesting that they said that like that. I might dwell on it for some time. It may not go anywhere, but that's one way I've noticed that I'm drawn to some ideas. I remember being in a cab once, and this was, I think, just after the elections in Nigeria, the presidential elections, and the cab driver said something along the lines of, they'll tell you that nobody died, but it's not true, or something like that. It was better than that. He did it. It was better than that. But it made such a huge impression on me. So things like that, where it's like, ooh, what could I do with that? My sister, the serial killer, was inspired by the Black Widow spider, because I thought it was hilarious that after mating, the female spider would sometimes eat the male spider. And I just thought, how cruel, and she's not her natural prey, so it just seemed unnecessarily cruel. And in many ways, I carried some of those qualities and placed them inside Ayoola. So it can come from anywhere. As to how to make it original, I think that that's really to do with how much content you consume, how many books you read, and what types of books you read. Because if you read widely, you'll sort of come in contact with different styles and different tools that writers use, and that will let you know what's out there, and then it will, I think, encourage you to try things yourself.
Well, I'm glad to hear that it's based off of the Black Widow spider and a personal experience or anything like that. Over in the chat, Joanne just says that she, about the cover, it says, mystery woman, the cover definitely draws attention, photo and graphics and text. And then she says, do you have a say or control on the cover art and the photo?
Generally speaking, I mean, I don't know how everybody's contract works, but most of the time I think you do have a say, but you don't have final say, if that makes sense. So you can say, I don't really like this, and and I hope that your publisher is reasonable, or well, I mean, it depends on if you're reasonable. I don't know, but I hope that your publisher wants you to be happy. But if they love the cover, and they will most likely argue that, look, they've got the experience in terms of marketing this content, they can still go ahead if you absolutely hate it. I've come across authors who can't hold a certain edition of their book because they hate the cover, and the publisher went ahead with it. That doesn't mean that the book won't sell, because they may have been right, maybe you're wrong. So I don't have final say, but a lot of the times I can kind of say, or we can compromise, and I'll say, okay, if you change this or change that. Yeah, hope that answers that question.
Awesome. Let's see. Next question is from Beth, and it says, is the relationship between the sisters based on anyone you know in real life?
Yes and no. I mean, I've got 2 sisters and a brother, and there's 2 years between myself and the girl after me, and I'm the eldest sibling. So in some respect, I can definitely empathize with Korede. I know what it's like to feel that heavy responsibility over your younger ones. And I also know it's possible to love and hate your sibling at the same time. So in that respect, I could definitely draw from my own experience, but I wouldn't say that their particular relationship is anything that I've seen.
Missy, thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Anytime. Anytime.
Missy didn't know she was doing that today, so I really appreciate your help.
No problem.
I think that I'm in the clear now.
Okay, welcome back.
Thank you. Just to follow up Beth's question, actually, Katie asked a very similar question about the sister dynamics and whether you had a sister or not. She also went on a little bit further and said, how did you get the nuanced dynamic of envy and loyalty, anger and love?
I think, I don't know. I don't know really. I think, like I said, I knowing, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I have, come across people who read the book who say they can definitely understand the relationship, that they have a sister and they get it. And I think that there's something about sisterhood that's quite complex. At times, it's not this straightforward kind of, you don't like your sister all the time. That's the truth. And there are times when I'm pretty sure like the girl after me, in fact, maybe all of us actually, all my siblings, where we've been like, are we sure we came from the same parents? We were brought up in the same home, but we're so different. And they're definitely, and those things, all those different emotions, envy and loyalty and all those, they don't all happen at the same time, but they do happen. Maybe because we're 3 girls, but I know I've been compared to my sisters. I know they've been compared to me in ways that have sometimes damaged us, in ways that have encouraged us, in ways that have inspired us to do better or try harder or whatever. But we've been compared nonetheless. So I do think that, all those things are true of, outside of fiction, they're true of how these relationships sometimes are.
Good answer. Gina, and I don't even remember the picture, but she wants to know, is there symbolism behind the painting in the house of the house?
Sorry, is there symbolism behind the painting?
Of the house, sorry, the painting in the house of the house.
Yes and no. No, because it's probably not as deep as you think, but as I would hope it was. But I think, again, I just like to play with things, and I think the idea that there was a painting was my way of just giving more life to the extent of the vanity that their father had, and how full of himself he was. Like, if you could choose, of all the paintings you could have commissioned, you decided to just have one of your house because your house is that great and you just wanted it. So yeah, it was just sort of another tool for me to play with that idea.
Okay, on that, and this isn't a question that's come in, but I just want to know myself, we talk about symbolism, the knife. I mean, what in your mind did that symbolize? Because there was also a cane, which to me sort of symbolized his cruelty more so than the knife, because as far as I understood, he never actually cut the girls with the knife.
The knife was many things for me. I think, for one, it was just me having a good time, because for some reason, sometimes I like to play with objects in storytelling. I don't do it enough, to be honest. When I do, I get really excited. So that was one of those moments. Also, the knife also kind of served as a way for Korede to, to try her hardest. It was another route that she could take to try and escape responsibility, or to rescue her sister from responsibility. Because there's a point where she's like, you know what, this knife, it has this violent history. Who's to say, it's the knife? Who's to say it isn't the knife that's doing these things? Instead of Ayoola, who's to say she's just, the body that's wielding the knife? So it's also, it serves as another figure that she can lay blame to, and I think also it was also kind of for me symbolized generational trauma. The fact that the father could pass on this tool to Ayoola, and for, yes, it wasn't a tool that he used to harm them, but it also, they had many negative memories in connection to that knife. And it's also when they saw their father at his most duplicitous, when he would pretend to be this charming guy, and then afterwards he would go back into himself, or he would be violent towards them or whatever. So the knife was many, many things for me, and I think for the characters as well.
Okay, let's change gears a little bit and talk about the ending, because that's probably been discussed on all of our book clubs so far. Jennifer asks specifically, did you mean to suggest in the end that she would keep killing, or did you leave it open for a sequel?
I kind of meant to suggest that she would keep on doing it. I wasn't thinking of a sequel when I was writing it, and I still haven't given much thought to a sequel now.
Okay, well, I know that everybody would love to see another book with these characters, for sure. I especially love the mother, I have to say.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, let's see. Teresa she says she loves the book, and she wants to know if you knew from the beginning how the story would unfold. So that's the pantser or plotter question.
I'm not a plotter. I wish I was, though, because it would save me a lot of stress if I was. But I'm not, so I didn't know. I usually have like a loose idea what the story is about, or sometimes it's just a sentence and I keep on going. These days I don't do the sentence, just keep on going, because I've realized that ends up in my file of drafts. So I try to have a loose idea of what I want out of the story, or even just the tone, and then I write, and then if I'm lucky, halfway through or something, I'll know how it's going to end. Doesn't always work out like that. Endings are my worst things ever. I mean, I'm starting to think maybe I should start with the ending and go backwards or something, because endings are really tough for me. Beginnings are fun, like relationships. So with these few points of mine, okay, I've gotten a little bit distracted. I think I answered that question though, so I'm gonna.
Okay, we have so many questions for you. Katie would like to know your thoughts on themes that you wove in and around the patriarchy and misogyny. And she wants to know if you got a better response from women than men readers.
Okay, so a second question about better response from women. Yeah, I think so. I don't know about better. I just get more responses from women. I think more women are reading my book, generally speaking. And possibly because, the idea of a woman killing men appeals to more women than it does men. And I have, and I have come across a handful of men who are kind of, I remember meeting a guy once who kept going on and on and on at me because he wanted me to admit that I had a secret desire to kill men, and he would not let off. So yeah, I don't know. I think some men find it really strange, and they sort of forget that it's fiction. But other than that, I just get more responses from women generally, and I've always kind of believed more women read fiction. This is just my general opinion, or at least from what I've been exposed to, especially in Nigeria. Men tend to read more like boring stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I generally get more responses from women. then the first question about my thoughts on the themes, that's really broad. I don't know, like if you had a specific, like what you wanted to know specifically, I don't know, but most of the time when I handle themes in my specific certain themes in my writing, I don't always even know what I think. I'm exploring it as I'm writing. Again, I'm not a plotter, so sometimes, and most of the time I'm not really trying to tell the reader what I think either. I'm just, I think I came across, I don't know whether it was a quote or something, about a writer not knowing what he thinks until he's written it. And I'm a bit like that. It's after I've written something down that I'm like, okay, this is, who said Tada? I was just corrected someone else. But I think, anyway, yeah, so generally I don't really know what my thoughts are until and sometimes some themes surprise me. Like it wasn't my intention to go into a certain theme and it just happens.
And I mean, the book, and maybe you'll answer this similarly, but the book does approach a lot of societal things that are happening in Lagos. Was that intentional? Did you want to make some sort of commentary, or?
I really do want that. I think I wrote a short story recently where I was like, oh, this is something I want to write about, but that's generally not my feeling about things that are going on. I think, I don't know, like when the book came out, this was still around or maybe at the tail end of, let me not say the tail end, but it was still around when the Me Too movement was really quite loud. And so I got a lot of questions about the Me Too movement. And I would shy away from them, not because I didn't believe in the movement, but because I didn't want to claim that something was my inspiration when it wasn't. The truth is, all these things, women have been dealing with them forever. They aren't new. So it isn't any particular thing that triggered me. It's just, I think as a woman, there are some things there's some things that that's just life, and you deal with them, and then they come out at interesting times, or you realize you're irritated by something on a particular occasion, but it's life as one knows it. So they're particular, so even let me see, the fact that they have this father who's this massive bully. Growing up in Nigeria, thankfully my dad isn't anything like that, but I did come across homes when the father would come home and all the children would disappear into their rooms, the TV would turn off, the mom would be rushing around getting the man's food ready, and sometimes these children didn't really have a relationship with their fathers. They may not even have necessarily been abusive the way the father in my sister's serial killer was, but nonetheless they were just this figure of discipline and fear in the home. So it's just, most of the time I'm trying to reflect what I see, and as I go along I'm able to engage with it and see how I feel about it and all that.
Okay, I have a question that I got emailed, and she wrote, maybe I missed the house girl's name, but did she have one? And was there a reason she wasn't really referred to with it? Was that an artistic choice alluding to how domestic workers are treated, or something else?
No, she didn't have a name. I did consider giving her a name at the very end because I wanted to show that you've got to bear in mind that the protagonist is Korede and not me. And so everything that's happening is happening through Korede's eyes. And Korede had a lot of, Korede had a lot of class. She exhibited a lot of classism throughout the novel. So the fact that she never names the house girl to us was an expression of her classism. So I had considered naming the house girl at the end just to show that Korede had grown past certain things, but in the end, with my editors, we decided to leave it as it was.
Okay, thank you. I've just lost that question. Sorry. So many questions, ladies. Thank you so much. Okay, so in the end, Tade suggests that Corday is worse than Ayoola because she knows her sister is dangerous and seems to condone her behavior. Who do you feel is the biggest transgressor, or the bigger transgressor?
Between Korede and Tade, or between Korede, Tade, and Ayoola?
I think between the two sisters.
Okay. Yeah, I think Korede might be the greater. I think I agree with Tade. I think Korede might be the greater transgressor because I think he's right. There's something wrong with Ayoola. That's just the truth. But Korede still has enough sense to know that they're crossing a line. And I think that yeah, I think I agree with him. I think that Korede had the power to stop things, and she didn't.
Okay, because there's a line in there, isn't it, that he says to, well, you just said you agree with him because he's the one who knows that yeah, she's in the wrong for sure. We have a question from Tracy, and she wants to know the importance. Actually, we've had this question a couple times. One came in via email, and the importance of Korede's relationship with the coma patient. And I don't have his name handy, but
Muta.
Yes, exactly. So what can you tell us about that?
Okay, what specifically about it, or just generally?
Well, I mean, the one came by email, she said she wants to know if you were intending for the reader to make a conjecture that Corday could possibly end up with his son.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. that I haven't been asked before. No, I wasn't trying to do that. Do you know what? The funny thing is, I was barely trying to even suggest, because most people are like, oh, they wish Corday had ended up with Muta, that she had gone off with him or something. And there's definitely something there, but I didn't really want it to be a romantic relationship. I know that I say that, and I know that I laid the seeds for it to maybe be like that. But I think, to be honest, I kind of was sort of gearing. I mean, there's a massive age gap between Korede and Muta, and so there's also a little bit of him being a father figure, being that father that she never had. So he was almost like on the I don't know, on the fence between the two, father and lover, which sounds really weird putting it together. I'm not trying to insinuate anything, but he was in this weird space, which is why I was kind of at peace with her not ending up with him, because I knew that in my mind he was also kind of almost like a father. He was somebody who loved her purely, kind of. So I hope I answered that question.
Okay, I'm going to switch gears again. Your book has been, and this is your first novel, correct? You've written a lot before, but this is the first standalone novel that you've written.
Yeah.
And you've met so much success. I mean, it like the awards and everything. It was longlisted for the Booker Prize, the Los Angeles Times Book Prize for Mystery Thriller in 2018. She was a nominee for Women's Prize for Fiction. Like, just so much great stuff. Where do you go from here? And like, how was that experience of writing a book and then having such praise? Because it's so hard out there.
I mean, there were moments when it was exhilarating, and then there were moments where it was terrifying. And I remember around funny enough, by the Booker Prize time, I think I was numb. I was a little numb when that was going on. But I remember the Women's Prize, because that came before the Booker Prize, and it gave me so much anxiety. And I think what has helped me mostly is that I've had to write. I've done a number of commissions since the short stories. And the thing about commissions is that you signed a contract to submit them by such and such a date. So, and I'm very kind of paranoid about deadlines. So when I've got that deadline, I have to write. And I think having done a number of them now, I've almost ridden myself out of the fear that I wouldn't be able to follow my sister the serial killer, because there was a fear of not knowing what people expected from me now. If they, do they want me to stay in this genre? I mean, to be honest, sometimes I'm not entirely sure. My sister's serial killer is a crime novel, but I've gone to so many crime festivals now that it's like, is this who I am now? Am I a crime writer? Is that what they want from me? If I decide I write fantasy, will I lose everybody who has decided that would I lose it? Like, there was just a lot. Am I a literary writer? Like, it was making it hard to be creative. I think that's the honest truth. But I wouldn't have it any other way, obviously, because I mean the success helps in selling your book, and I wasn't expecting it. So every day has been a blessing, and I've been thankful.
I don't think you can look at it any other way, but I can certainly understand how that, like, such a successful book, it makes the next book like just that much more difficult. Speaking of which, let's move on to, are you in the process of writing another book?
No, I wish I was. I do think about it. I think about it a lot. But like I said, I've been doing a lot of short stories, so they've kind of taken most of my time. So I'm hoping to take a break from them this year so that I can start thinking about a novel length work.
And just for anybody out there, we always love to hear from authors about kind of their experience with the publishing industry, because in our demographic, we do have a lot of would-be or would love to be authors. And as I was saying before, it's quite a difficult industry to break into. Can you speak to that, or your experience with getting published?
Yeah. Okay, I kind of usually I talk to people about getting agents and all that. Just I usually talk quite a bit about things to know when you're querying an agent. However, and like I did a lot of research about that before, well, just generally, because my degree was also in creative writing and law, and I used to buy all these books about it and all that. But when it came down to it, I actually didn't ever query an agent, even though I had this like Excel spreadsheet that had loads of agents in it that I was going to query when I had the great novel. But in the end, what actually ended up happening was I was shortlisted for the Commonwealth Short Story Prize, which is, I think, another thing for aspiring writers to know, that outside of querying agents, entering competitions and entering your work into magazines is also a great way to just get your work out there. So I was shortlisted for the Commonwealth Short Story Prize in 2016, and that's when the agency that I would eventually join reached out to me. And it took me a year. I mean, I responded to them right away, but they asked me then if I had any longer work, and I did, but I didn't have anything I wanted to send to them. So it was actually a year before I got back to them with what would eventually be My Sister the Serial Killer. So that's kind of how my journey was. It's very kind of simple.
If you have any questions, any more questions, lady, we're just going to ask ladies rather, and we're just going to ask one or two more questions before we sign off. My last question for you is that I know you're not based in the States, but Black Lives Matter is a global movement, and how, if it has, affected your experience as a Black author?
Gosh, how's it affected my experience? I don't know. It's weird because yes, it's a global issue, but it was also going on during the pandemic. So it's hard to really come to terms yet with whether or not it's changed all that much, because we haven't, I've not been going out to book festivals. I've not been, so I can't even say, okay, there's more diversity now, or there's more, and to be honest, prior to the movement, I already felt as though things were starting to, in terms of Black literature, Black movies and Black TV shows, I had already started to see that there was a movement. I remember even from like Black Panther, the way that the Black community showed up for Black Panther, it was one of those moments where I started to realize that the Black community is looking for its own, they want to see more of their own. They want to see more of their own stories. They want to see more of their own people. And so it was actually Black Panther time for me that I started to realize that, whoa, like we're willing to, because people were turning up. I mean, we all watched it here. It was so, we all filled cinemas here in Nigeria, but, in places like America or England, people were coming in our traditional clothing. They were going in our, what do you call it, agbadas and things like that to the cinema. And I was like, wow, like this is how seriously people are taking this. And at the end of the day, it was this fictional fantasy film, but it meant so much to the community. And I think that's when I started to realize that that the Black community is willing to fight for visibility, is willing to fight for their own. But obviously the horrors that are going on in America, actually, for me, they're kind of separate from the issue of, being an author and visibility. That's some people's lives that are at stake. So that's the different, I mean, as much as we can, we will have to continue to support one another so that change can happen.
Absolutely. Ashna has a question. It's very specific to the novel, so we're changing gears yet again. She wants to know who the man at the end of the novel was.
Oh, okay. I get that question a lot. It makes me uncomfortable to answer it because, I'm like, who do you think it was? But basically he was just, I mean, we talked earlier about whether or not my intention was that they just keep on killing and killing and killing, and he's just another potential victim. So he's nobody that you've met before. He's not Mutar.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies. And thank you so much for being with us tonight. Oyinka.
Yeah.
Mentioned in the comments that they would have liked to have a pronunciation guide for the names and the lingo, because when they came to something from unfamiliar, they would really mess it up, and I certainly felt the same way as well. So it's nice to hear you say the names of the characters and pronounce them correctly. Oh, and
thank you, Katie. Thank you, Chue. I don't know if I said Chue's name properly, but I'm trying.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, everyone. No, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Take care.